If you live in a growing city, you've probably felt it, right? Finding a place to live keeps getting harder and definitely more expensive. Well, Louisville, Kentucky is facing that exact problem, and they've come up with a really ambitious blueprint to tackle it. So let's dive in and see how one city plans to build its way to a more affordable future.
First, let's just start with one number, $282,900. Now, that was the median home price in Louisville not too long ago. And it's way more than just a statistic. It tells a story about a city where the dream of owning a home is just getting further and further out of reach. It's a huge red flag for affordability.
So you gotta ask, why? What is making it so hard to find a home in Louisville? And the answer is a little more complicated than just simple supply and demand. In fact, the biggest thing holding it back might just be hiding in plain sight, the city's own rulebook.
Yeah, the problem isn't a lack of space or a lack of people who want to build. The real issue, according to the city's own deep dive study, is buried in the Land Development Code. You can think of it as a set of outdated rules that are actually stopping new homes from being built.
And here is where it gets really wild. Many of the classic, beloved home styles that make Louisville's neighborhoods so popular, the very places people are dying to live, are now, believe it or not, illegal to build in large parts of the city.
Just take a look at these classic row houses. This kind of housing used to be a staple in Louisville. But today, if you tried to build one in many areas, the modern zoning laws would shut you down. It's this bizarre conflict between the city's own history and its current regulations.
Okay, so let's break down the three main culprits here. First up are density limits. These are rules that put a hard cap on how many homes you can build on a piece of land. So imagine a great neighborhood with awesome schools and parks. Well, density limits actually prevent more families from moving in by artificially choking off the housing supply, which, you guessed it, drives prices way up.
Next, you've got infill building height standards. This one is especially weird. It basically says that a new building has to be the same height as its older neighbors, even if the area's zoning code says it's totally fine to build taller. It stops even small increases in housing, like adding just one more story to an apartment building.
And the third big barrier, minimum lot sizes. These rules say every new house has to sit on a big piece of property. The result? It's basically impossible to build smaller, more affordable stuff like duplexes or townhomes, the kind of places that don't need a huge yard. It just completely locks out a whole range of housing choices.
Okay, so the city figured out what the problems were. But what's the solution? This is where they got really strategic. Louisville developed a new framework, basically a new map, to guide smarter growth for the years ahead.
And here it is. This is that new blueprint. It's called an analysis map, and you can see how it pinpoints specific areas for development. So instead of just random growth happening everywhere, this map shows the most logical places for new housing and where things like water, sewer, and sidewalks need to be prioritized.
The main idea behind this map is actually pretty simple and pretty powerful. The plan focuses new development around what it calls anchors. So think of these as little hubs like town centers or major bus stops, and the anchor neighborhoods that surround them. The goal is just to build up density where it makes the most sense.
So if you have a new map for where to build, the next logical step is to change the rules about what you can build. And this part of the plan is all about unlocking a much wider variety of housing options.
The key to all this is a concept called middle housing. Now, it's not a new idea, but it is a critical one. Middle housing is basically everything that fits between a traditional single-family house on a big lot and a giant apartment complex. So we're talking about duplexes, triplexes, townhouses. You get the idea.
Here you can see exactly what we're talking about. The idea is to re-legalize these types of homes, like the ones on the right, to gently increase the number of housing options inside existing neighborhoods, all without drastically changing their character.
So what are the big moves the city is prioritizing? This table sums it up. Right at the top of the list, permit middle housing again. They also want to fix those weird height standards, so measuring in stories instead of feet, get rid of other rules that limit height, and even cut back on parking requirements near major transit lines.
Now, a plan is really just a document until you actually start putting it into practice. To make that jump, Louisville's strategy includes a really smart step, turning these big ideas into small, real-world pilot projects.
And here's how they're going to do it. First, the city's going to find land it already owns. Then, it's going to work with the local community to design these new types of housing. By building these projects themselves, the city can create real-life examples, basically showing private developers, hey look, this is possible, and reducing the risk for them to follow suit. This, for instance, is a concept for a pocket neighborhood with smaller homes all built around a shared green space. It's a style that hasn't been common in Louisville lately. By building a few of these, the city can really demonstrate just how attractive and practical these other housing models can be.
Okay, this all sounds great. More housing, more choices, smarter growth, but it brings up a huge question. As all this new investment comes into neighborhoods and they start to grow, what happens to the people who've been living there for years? How do you keep them from being priced out? And that brings us to the final and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle. The city's plan isn't just about growth. It's about growing fairly. It has dedicated strategies to make sure that as Louisville builds up, it doesn't push its longtime residents out. The strategy to stop displacement is elegantly simple, and you can see it in these two icons from the report. First, you have to preserve the affordable housing that already exists. And second, you have to actively produce new affordable housing. It's a two-pronged attack.
And here are just some of the ways they plan to do it. We're talking about expanding things like community land trusts to create permanently affordable homes, fast-tracking the approval process for affordable projects, giving grants to at-risk homeowners to help them stay put, and supporting tenants who might be forced to relocate.
This quote from the report really just sums up the whole philosophy. This isn't just about building luxury condos. The core goal is to make sure there's enough housing for every single person who lives in Louisiana, no matter what their income is.
And that leaves us with a final thought. Louisville has put together a really detailed, thoughtful, and ambitious plan that connects zoning reform with equitable development. It makes you wonder, as cities all over the country face similar housing crises, could this comprehensive approach be a model for your own community?